When you let someone else write your story for you, what you're doing is you're showing that insecurity. You don't know you're showing it. You're showing it by quick temperament, by the
Mm-hmm.
inability to be calm in a moment of frustration, by all these little things that pop out, and everyone in your life and everyone in your family sees it. But owning your story is looking in the mirror and knowing what that looks like,
Yeah.
and allowing you to shape that direction, right?
Yeah.
That's such
Yeah.
a major difference maker. And in M&A, and when we buy, one last point, when we,
Yeah. Yeah.
when we buy a company, right, and we are teaching someone to make sure that their clients, their customers, everybody knows what's happening, we always say the first thing you have to do is own your story, because if you own your
Mm.
story, you're not letting someone else write it for you. And if someone else writes it for you, it can often be even more shame, more frustration, the wrong version. And when you know who you are and you're able to look in the mirror and do it, I think that's what you're talking about. And it's so powerful.
I think one of the great kind of pieces of that I want to take into, if you're not owning it, then every single interaction is a different story. And this is what becomes difficult. Then you lose, who am I really? Early in my sales career, there was this element where it's like you were taught to be a chameleon, be whoever the customer needed you to be. And when you stop and think about that, is like, how destructive is that on a person? Because, and we see this, and it's a stereotype as I'm going to say it. We see salespeople who will show up as however they need to be to make the sale. And then you look at their outside life, and it's totally different, and they're lost because they're trying to find out who they really are. But it's the salespeople, it's the leaders who they're the same person, whoever they're in any relationship, and right, wrong, different. They show up consistently. I mean, they tend to have less of a, I would say, roller coaster lifestyle. And I think it comes back to this point. If we can just accept, own who we are. Yep, I have fears and insecurities. I understand how they show up. I can own them and understand that it's just a navigation through life. But if I can authentically do that, when you and I sit down and have a conversation, or I sit down and have a conversation with someone else, it's like, yeah, that's Scott, that's Tyler, that's who they are. And I can appreciate that, but I can rely on it. As opposed to, I show up one day and I'm trying to, profess that I know this or that, or I'm trying to, be liked and appreciated. And you're like, well, I'm never really sure what I'm going to get. And whether we understand and could put words to that, it's like, oh, I like Scott, but I'm not sure what I'm going to get. It's not trusting. But if I like Scott and like, man, I know what I'm going to get, and I know what he cares about. And I know his, he accepts his quirks, right? We all have quirks, right? You, me, everyone. And if he accepts that, I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, I do that. Man, then you appreciate him rather than loathe them. And I think that's the whole piece here, is like being willing to recognize, then own, and then also understand it's like, hey, whatever's driven us to believe the things we believe, man, am I going to continue with that, or am I going to change that mindset because it doesn't serve me?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are playing a part. A lot of
Mm.
people are playing the part of who they think someone else wants them to be.
Oh,
And they're a chameleon. They go in, they play a part in front of their family, and they find themselves falling into a role that they don't even love when they walk back out. And I see it in business all the time. I see it in life. You have someone who's unhappy with what they're becoming or who they're becoming, because what they're becoming and who they're becoming isn't their written story. They didn't write
yeah,
their own version.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
letting someone else define them. And I think that when you realize that life is yours, there's a choice that you can
Mm-hmm.
make, and you can
Mm-hmm.
choose to do exactly that. Live an
Yeah,
authentic life, which I
yeah.
love that you're saying, because it's funny. I often, if I say something maybe controversial or strong, someone will say, "Gosh, I hope someone doesn't hear that." And I'm like, I would say this exact thing to their
Yeah,
face.
yeah,
I'm not hiding this or saying this to be gossipy. I'm saying it because I believe in it. It's with
yeah,
conviction.
yeah.
That's called not playing a part. That's called being authentic. You stand up the same way everywhere you go.
Well, there's a couple elements there that I think I can hinge off of. One, the tagline of my book is what you hide controls you, what you face transforms you. And so this element, as you said, is just like, if I'm choosing to hide it, it is going to control the narrative. It's going to dictate the story. But if I face it, and here's the difference, it's not throwing it in someone's face. That isn't how I took it from you. That's how I'm explaining it too. It's not that way. It's not throwing it in someone's face, but it's also like, hey, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is my genuine quality. But then there's also this dynamic, and it's what I call authentic vulnerability. If I'm willing to share the pieces of me, the things that I hide, if I'm willing to open up and share that, it's to enhance our relationship. It's to develop a connection. That's what authentic vulnerability is for. If you're like those things that are, maybe controversial, if you say that to poke at someone, that's not building the relationship.
No.
But if you're like, hey, man, I appreciate that opinion. You and I were talking about youth sports beforehand. And if I had a different opinion than you, right? That would have been fine because it would have enhanced our perspective, your experiences, my experiences. But if all of a sudden I said, Scott, you're completely wrong, and just tell you differently, and it doesn't help our relationship at all, then me sharing it doesn't add any benefit. I can still have that opinion. But if it doesn't enhance our relationship, our connection, or understanding, then it becomes a barrier in our ability to walk together, to go anywhere together, to accomplish anything together. And when you look at it from a life, from a leadership, from a relationship point of view, we don't need things to take us apart. There's plenty of those that are natural. There's plenty of things that are different between you and I. We have different opinions. That's fine. But man, there's a lot of things that are similar, and no different than people listening in your workplace, in your life with your family. There's differences. But man, there's a lot of things that bring you together. Let's focus on those things bring together and bring those out rather than hiding them, thinking that others aren't going to appreciate it. I'm going to give you one example, and partly it's behind me. If you've seen me on the podcast before, you see this cow crossing sign. I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up on a farm in Northeast Ohio, and for many, many, many years of my life, even though I worked within agriculture, I didn't share about being involved in agriculture because it was part of society always looked down upon it. People didn't understand. They're like, oh, that's weird. That's odd. That's, there's something wrong with you. There's the perception myself and so many other farm kids felt. And so for years, I hid it. I just wouldn't talk about it. Like, I wasn't ashamed of it, but I didn't put it front and forward. Well, now I understand, as we're in today's day and age in society, it's like the perspective that it gives me is amazing. And as I have become more authentic, people are like, that's what I appreciate about you. The number of times, and you might see them, as we're talking here, there might be some cows walking in the background. There are people like, oh, that's real. That isn't made up. Like, yeah, it is. And I think the ability to use that simple example that I hid for so many years of my life, that everyone knew, oh, that's a part of you. Why do you hide it? Well, then there must be shame there. No, there wasn't. It was just other people's perception. So I allowed them to write the story as opposed to, yep, this is me. I own cows. I work on a farm. Why? Because it's a hobby, no different than, other people have other hobbies, and I enjoy it. And reality is, people that like me and tend to be around me appreciate it, rather than thinking, oh, there's something wrong with you.
I was listening to a panel on Genius Network at the annual event last year.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Jefferson Fisher and Chris Voss. And
okay.
and it was, I mean, talking about the right kinds of conversations, and one's a master negotiator in one world, one's a master negotiator in the legal world. And I don't remember who said it, so I just remember it standing out and being open. And I think Jefferson said, he goes, just changing it from "you are wrong" to, I kind of see it just a little bit differently, and then explaining what you see, how smooth that transition can be. You and I were talking youth sports, and we saw one point slightly differently. But you know what? I'm so curious, based on your background, your children, the success that they've had, and that I'm open to saying something and not having complete conviction that it's the only way to think. I want to hear other refuting points. And it's so powerful, that curiosity. I think that curiosity leads to empathy. See, when you understand someone's story, you can start to empathize with where they've come from. And, you said something as simple as farm kids. And I think about, being in high school and actually thinking like the 4-H stuff. I was like, dude, how are people doing this all the time? Like, now I would kill to be on a farm and to have my kids out there and to be thinking differently. I just was so closed to that
Hmm.
point. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.